This ranch sells $1,160,000 of cattle every fall. One check, once a year, one auction. 500 mother cows, 4,200 acres, a pickup, a tractor, and one man who runs all of it. After everything is paid, the man who owns this ranch takes home $70,000 for the entire year of work. And that number is generous, because most of it is simply the wage he pays himself out of the checking account. The business itself, the actual bottom line after every bill, clears $20,000, 500 cows, $40 each. He is not poor. On paper, he is a millionaire many times over. He just cannot touch almost any of it. The land, the herd, and the iron are worth about $8 million. The cash they throw off is 5 figures. That gap is the whole story, and it is not a story about bad management or about one unlucky year of weather. It is a story about what land costs now, and about who actually collects the money that a cattle ranch produces. Because the ranch does earn a real return. It earns almost exactly the rent on the ground that it sits on. The only question is whether that rent ends up in his pocket or in a bank building in the county seat. Ranches do not fail the way restaurants fail. Nobody walks past one morning and finds the doors locked up forever. They fail slowly, across a decade, and the first crack is almost always the same one. Money moves once a year. Feed goes out every month. Fuel goes out every month. Interest goes out every month. Revenue arrives in the fall. So every ranch runs on an operating line of credit, borrowing against a calf crop that does not yet exist. This one pays $27,500 a year in interest, purely to bridge the gap between spending and selling. That is not money spent on cattle or on grass. That is simply the price of running a business with one payday. Now add a dry summer. Grass stops growing in June, hay triples, and the calves come in light in the fall. The line of credit does not get paid off. It rolls into next year, and next year starts in a hole. 2 of those in a row and the bank stops asking questions politely. Cows get sold to cover the note. Sell cows and you sell next year's calf crop. That is how a ranch dies, slowly and from the inside out. A weaned steer calf, 570 pounds, sold at auction this fall brought $2,400. One animal. Say that out loud and ranching sounds like a printing press. $2,400 for something that eats grass. But nobody sells calves. They sell pounds. That steer went for $4.14 a pound of live weight. Now run it the other direction. Take every dollar this ranch spent all year and divide it by the pounds shipped. $4.05. That is what 1 pound of calf costs him to put onto the trailer. He sells at $4.14. He builds it at $4.05. 8 cents a pound is the entire business. 8 cents on an animal that took a cow 11 months to make and another 7 months of grass to raise.
Per cow, it looks like this: $2,320 in, $2,280 out.
$40 per cow per year. That is the margin in the most expensive cattle market in American history. And this is the good year. This is the top of the cattle cycle, the best prices anyone alive has seen. Which should tell you something uncomfortable about what this arithmetic looks like when prices come back down to normal. 500 cows went to the bull. 435 calves were alive and weaned by the fall. 87%. That is a good number. The rest were open cows, dead calves, and bad luck in February. Roughly half came out male. 222 steer calves went on the truck at 570 pounds. Those steers brought $532,800, the single largest line on the whole operation. 213 heifer calves went as well, lighter at 530 pounds and worth less per pound. $457,950 for the heifers. Together, the calf crop is $990,000. Then there are the cows he culled. 70 old females, open or broken-mouthed, that will not make another winter. At 1,250 pounds each, they brought $151,200. Nobody plans for that money. 5 bulls went the same way, another $18,050, because bulls wear out faster than anybody ever expects. $1,160,000. 4 sales, 1 season, 1 buyer's ring, and then 11 months of silence. Notice what is missing. There is no second revenue stream, no retail, no subscription, no repeat customer, only the fall. There are other ways to sell a calf, and every one of them looks better on paper than the sale barn does. He could hold them over winter, put on 200 pounds, and sell yearlings in the spring for a great deal more. That costs feed all winter, and it doubles the money he has tied up in animals. Ranchers call that gambling. He could sell direct to families beef by the quarter and capture the retail price instead of the commodity price. That means processing dates booked a year out, a freezer, a website, delivery routes, and 100 separate customers. It is a different business wearing the same hat. Most people who try it quietly go back to the auction. He could sell private treaty to a feed yard buyer and skip the ring entirely, saving the commission on every head. Buyers pay for volume and for uniformity. Load lots of 80 match steers, move quickly. Odd calves and singles do not. 500 cows is finally enough scale to sell in load lots, which is worth real money at the scale house. So the auction wins. Not because it pays the best, but because it pays reliably. In October, in one check. Here is the line that decides everything. 4,200 acres of grass are required to run these cows. 2,600 of those acres he owns. The other 1,600 he rents from 3 different neighbors. The rented ground costs $30 an acre, $48,000 a year. Paid in the spring, no argument. The owned ground feels free. It is not. He bought it, and he is still paying for it every single month. Grazing land here runs around $2,300 an acre. His 2,600 acres cost nearly $6 million. He put down almost $2 million and financed $4 million of dirt across 25 years at 6.5%. The interest alone on that note is $260,000 a year, not the payment, only the interest. Add $21,000 of property tax on the deeded ground and $48,000 of lease on the rest. $329,000 a year just to stand on the ground. 28% of everything sold. That is 4.5 times what the owner takes home. The land earns more from him than he does. Now compare the two halves directly, because this is the number nobody quotes at the coffee shop in town. Rented grass costs $30 an acre. Owned grass costs $108 an acre in interest and tax. Owning the exact same acre, growing the exact same grass, costs 3.5 times what renting it costs. At $30 an acre of rent avoided, a $2,300 acre pays itself back in 77 years. Cattle do not buy ranch land. They never have. The grass cannot service the debt that the grass itself is worth. And you cannot opt out. No land, no cows. There's no lean version of this business, no smaller footprint. So the real decision on a ranch is not which cattle to buy. It is which acres to control, and how. Grass is not just grass. In this country, a cow and her calf need roughly 8 acres to get through the year. 200 miles west, that same pair needs 30 acres. 300 miles east, she needs 3. Rain sets the rules. Cheap land is cheap because it grows less. You do not save money going west. You simply have to buy more of it. Water decides the rest. An acre without a well, a pond, or a pipeline is an acre that a cow cannot use. A lease is a handshake and a check. No down payment, no closing, no 30-year commitment to a bank. It is also the least secure thing in his business. Leases end when the landlord dies, or when the heirs sell. Lose 1,600 acres in March, and he has to sell 200 cows by June. He cannot grow grass faster. That is the trade. Ownership is expensive and permanent. Leasing is cheap, and it can vanish with one phone call. Most operations end up split exactly like this, owning the core and renting the edges, because neither option works alone. The owned ground is the anchor. It is why he can borrow it all, and it is why the borrowing never ends. Suppose you wanted to buy this ranch tomorrow, everything walking and everything standing, about $8 million, give or take. The land is $5,980,000 of that, 2,600 acres of grass, and nothing else. The cows are another 1,500,500 bred females at roughly $3,000 a head. 20 bulls at $4,100 each, 82,000 more, and they are consumable rather than permanent. Then the iron, around $450,000 of tractor, baler, feed truck, trailers, and 2 working pickups. Nothing on that list is optional, and nothing on that list is cheap. A used round baler is a house payment. The corrals matter more than people think. Steel pens, a curved alley, a squeeze chute, and a decent set of scales. Bad pens mean bruised cattle, hurt help, and a full day lost every time he has to work the herd. Fence is the invisible number. 60 miles of wire and posts around this outfit, and every mile of it fails eventually. Water is the other one. Wells, tanks, pipeline, and ponds, all of which freeze in January and fail in August. $8 million to buy a job that pays $70,000. Nobody finances a ranch off the cattle. Nobody ever has. There's one equipment decision on a cow-calf outfit that changes the entire cost structure. Hay, buy it or make it. Making your own hay means a tractor, a mower, a rake, a baler, and a month of summer you do not have. Call it $200,000 of machinery that runs 6 weeks a year and rusts for the other 46. Buying hay means writing a check to somebody else and letting them own the machinery, the breakdowns, and the weather risk. This ranch does both, and that is the compromise almost everyone lands on after they have tried each one alone. His own hay costs about $65 a ton in fuel, twine, and repairs, and that ignores his own time. Bought hay lands in the barn at $135 a ton, twice the cost and none of the labor. In a wet year, making hay wins easily. In a dry year, his fields make nothing, and he is buying anyway. So he keeps the equipment for the good years and the phone number for the bad ones. Both of them cost money. 3 separate debts run through this operation, and every one of them behaves differently. Confusing them is how ranches get lost. The land note. $4 million across 25 years. The biggest, the slowest, and the one that never moves. The payment is $328,000 a year. 260 of that is interest. 68 is principal. Only the interest is an expense. The principal is not, but it leaves the account anyway, and he feels every dollar. The equipment note, $300,000 at 7%, refreshed every few years as the old iron gives out. $21,000 a year in interest, plus principal payments that dwarf the interest and never show up as profit. And the operating line. Revolving, drawn all spring and summer, paid down in one motion when the calf check clears. Farm lenders price these around 7% right now, higher than the last decade and lower than 2 years ago. Every one of those loans is secured by the same thing, the land, which is why the land can never be sold. Sell 100 acres to raise cash, and the bank wants its share first. The collateral shrinks and the note stays. That is the trap. He owns something enormously valuable, and he is not permitted to use it for anything except this. Ranching is one of the last businesses in America you can start without asking anyone for permission. That surprises people. No license to own cattle. No inspector at the gate. No permit to calve out 500 cows in a pasture. What does exist is animal identification. Ear buttons, more and more of them electronic, tracking cattle across state lines for disease control. Brand inspection in many states, health papers from a veterinarian for anything crossing a line, and a levy on every head sold. Prescription drugs for livestock now require a veterinary relationship, which means a real vet who has actually walked through his herd. Water rights in the drier half of the country are worth more than the grass and get fought over accordingly. If he ever feeds and finishes cattle at scale, environmental rules arrive quickly and the paperwork gets serious very fast. But for a cow-calf outfit, regulation is not the wall. The wall is simply the price of the ground. Here's the part that separates ranching from every other business this channel has taken apart. He sets no prices. A coffee shop can raise a latte a quarter. A barber can add $3. He cannot add 1 cent. The calf is worth whatever the ring says it is worth on the Tuesday morning that he happens to be there. That price is set by feedlot demand, corn futures, packer capacity, and how many cows the country liquidated 4 years ago. None of that is visible from his kitchen. All of it lands on his one annual check with no warning at all. What he can control is what shows up in that ring. And that is worth a great deal more than people admit. Uniform calves, one color, weaned and vaccinated, sold in full load lots, bring a real premium over mixed odd cattle. 20 cents a pound of premium across 240,000 pounds is $48,000. More than he keeps. Weaning weight is the other lever. 10 more pounds per calf across the crop is 4,000 pounds of free product. So the pricing strategy is simple and brutal. He cannot move the price. He can only move what he brings. Now the labor, and this is where that $70,000 figure starts to look different than it did earlier. Hired help costs $57,000 a year. Day work at branding, weaning, shipping, and 1 part-timer through calving. Everything else is him. Feeding in January, checking heifers at 2 in the morning, fixing fence, hauling, and doctoring. There is no closing time. Cattle do not observe weekends, and a cow calving backwards does not wait until Monday. Calving season is 6 weeks of 4-hour sleep. Summer is fence and hay. Fall is shipping. Winter is feeding. For all of that, he pays himself $50,000 a year, which is roughly what the account will allow. A ranch manager doing this same job for somebody else would want $75,000 plus a house and a truck. Hire that man and this ranch loses money. The books only balance because the owner works below the market rate. That is not a criticism. It is the actual business model, and it is true of most family agriculture in America. The unpaid labor gap is the profit. Take it away, and there is nothing underneath it holding the whole thing up. The supplier list on a ranch is short, and the biggest name on it is the weather. That is the problem. Hay is the largest input he actually buys. $120,000 in a normal year, and normal is rare. Grass hay trades around $105 a ton nationally right now. Delivered, it lands well above that. That price is not set by a supplier. It is set by rainfall 600 miles away in somebody else's county. In a genuine drought year, his own fields fail, and bought hay runs near $290,000 instead. That single swing is $170,000 against a business whose entire annual profit is $20,000. One dry summer does not shave the margin. It erases the margin, the owner's pay, and a chunk of next year. Right now, most of Oklahoma sits in drought, and nearly 40% of the state is in the extreme category. There's insurance for rainfall, and he buys it. It softens the hit. It does not come close to covering it. If you started this ranch from zero tomorrow, the first year would look nothing at all like the year we just walked through. You buy the ground in the spring. You buy 500 bred cows. You wait. Nothing sells for 18 months. Bred females are the most expensive they have ever been because everyone else has finally figured out this market too. $3,000 a head for a cow that will give you one calf a year for 8 years, maybe. Meanwhile, the land note starts immediately. So does the hay bill, the fuel, the vet work, and the property tax. That is roughly $700,000 of cost before one single calf is even old enough to be sold. Which is why almost nobody starts a ranch. They inherit one, or they marry one, or they buy one with outside money. The buyers in this market are usually not cattlemen. They are people selling a company, a building, or an oil lease. Cattle pay the taxes and keep the ground in agricultural use. That is what the herd is actually there for. The first 90 days of ownership are the ones that teach you what you actually bought. They are always the same. Week 1, you find out what the fence really looks like. The seller's fence is never the fence that you saw. Week 3, a water gap washes out, and 40 head are standing in the neighbor's wheat at 5 in the morning. Week 6, you learn which cows are actually bred, and the answer is fewer of them than the sale catalog suggested. Week 9, the tractor needs a repair that costs more than the payment on it, and hay season is starting. None of that is revenue. All of it is cash. And the calf crop is still 9 months away from an auction. The operating line takes the whole load, and by the first fall, you already owe the bank more than you planned. Everyone who has done it will tell you the same thing. Budget for a year of expenses and then double it. Scaling a ranch means one thing only: more acres, not better systems, not more locations, not a second shift. And more acres cost $2,300 a piece, which the cattle standing on them are never going to repay. So growth is not funded by the business, it is funded by the appreciation of the land you already control. Which brings us to the number this whole episode has been walking toward. Grazing land rose 4% last year. On his 2,600 acres, that is $251,000, he did not do anything to earn it. He made $70,000 working. He made $251,000 sleeping, 3.5 times more, doing nothing. But he cannot spend $1 of it. Sell the land and the herd has nowhere to stand and the business ends. This is not a business that makes money. It is a way to own land that mostly manages to pay for itself. If that 8-cent margin surprised you, hit the like button. It tells me to keep taking these numbers seriously. Subscribe and you get one of these every week. One business, the real books, and the number the owner actually keeps. Comment with the business you want next. And if you have run cattle, put your own numbers down. I will read them.